Gus Nyquist, Joonas Korpisalo, and Vladislav Gavrikov are no longer Blue Jackets as Columbus got involved with the trade deadline fun late last night. Let's talk about that.
You're Locked On Blue Jackets, your daily podcast on the Columbus Blue Jackets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Blue Jackets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am, as always, your host, Jay Foster, here to bring you news, stories, the good, the bad, and the ugly about your favorite team and mine, the Columbus Blue Jackets. Before we get started, I want to thank everyone for making this your first listen of the day every day. Locked On Blue Jacket is free and available on all podcast platforms. We're over on YouTube. If you haven't hit subscribe over there yet, we're on our way to the next milestone. Please feel free to do so. It helps me out. It helps you out. Everybody wins. And I also need to let you know that this episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, the official sportsbook of the Locked On Podcast Network. Make every moment more and visit FanDuel.com/lockedon today to get started. And I could have put money on the trade happening last night because the trade always happens when I am asleep. In fairness, I was awake for the Gus Nyquist one, which we might as well talk about first, actually. So we'll talk about that in just a second. And then when they started having rumblings about LA being involved with Joonas Korpisalo for Vladislav Gavrikov, I was like, oh, this is going to be a trade that breaks at like 5 a.m. my time, 6 a.m. my time, and sure enough, about 5:30 in the morning for me, it came through that Vladislav Gavrikov and Joonas Korpisalo are headed to Los Angeles in return for a first-round pick, a third-round pick, and a gently used Jonathan Quick, veteran goaltender, but we'll talk about that in a minute as well. The Blue Jackets also won a game last night in between those two trades. Got a little bit hairy in the middle there, but we'll talk about that game in just a second as well. Let's take things. You know what? Let's take things in order of importance. Let's do the big trade first because that's the most fun. The Blue Jackets, like I said, they move Korpisalo and Gavrikov to the LA Kings for a first-round pick, a third-round pick, and Jonathan Quick. I'm a huge fan of this trade. I think this is a brilliant trade. I know the talk out there was that Jarmo Kekalainen wanted a first, a third, and a fourth for Vladislav Gavrikov. So then, I think the plan was to turn around, flip him for a first and a third, and be like, hey, look, what a good deal you got, or a first and a fourth, or whatever. Now, with the Bruins making the trade for their guy, with Edmonton making the trade for their guy, they got Bruins got Dmitry Orlov, and the Oilers got Mattias Ekholm. It really only came down to LA. I think Jarmo maybe lost some leverage there, but getting a first and a third and a player in return, we'll talk about Jonathan Quick as a player in just a little bit, but getting 3 assets back for 2 players, especially considering Gavrikov isn't interested in discussing extensions right now with any team, apparently, which does make me think he's maybe just going to come back to Columbus in the offseason, which would be very funny. Joonas Korpisalo has been the best goaltender for the Blue Jackets this season by a pretty big margin, though Elvis has been playing better in recent months. Getting a veteran goaltender back, I think, is a really smart move. Daniil Tarasov is currently out with an injury, so they had to call up Jet Greaves last night to back Elvis up. Joonas Korpisalo held out for trade reasons. It's a very tidy piece of work. Honestly, I think Kekalainen realized he wasn't going to get the first and the third for Gavrikov himself, but wanting to move both players, I think I would have accepted a first-round pick for Joonas Korpisalo, and I would have accepted a third and a player for Gavrikov. So honestly, I think it balances out. I think this is really good value, pretty good asset management from Kekalainen as well. Jonathan Quick is, I believe, a UFA at the end of this season. He has either this year or next year is his last year. So we'll see what happens there. But like I said, it is a veteran piece that couldn't hurt the team and probably won't hurt the tank either, based on how he's been playing this season. It's been kind of rough for the Kings goaltenders this season, but I think probably Joonas Korpisalo going to LA is a really good move, both for the Kings and for Joonas, who, like I said, has been the best goalie for the Blue Jackets this season. And I hope that they have a good run. Okay, Quick is a UFA at the end of this season. Currently making 5.8. He's 37 years old. So honestly, I don't know. Maybe he signs an extension on the cheap. Maybe he signs somewhere else. Maybe he retires at the end of this season. But it's a really low-risk player pickup. I think if there'd been, maybe more term left on that deal, I wouldn't be as big of a fan. But the hockey fan part of me that, was around in 2013 to 2015, I love Jonathan Quick. Jonathan Quick was one of the first goalies that I really kind of fell in love with. So I'm super excited for nostalgia reasons. But in terms of player reasons, I'm not sure he's going to help the team win any games, which is, I'm again not upset about aiding the tank in any way. And I don't think he's going to hurt the team either. I don't think it's going to be a big, oh no, what have we done? He's going to really mess up the chemistry of the team, or he's going to throw a tantrum like Jeff Carter did back in 2012. I don't think it's going to be that. Apparently, he's not very happy about the trade, but it is what it is. He is on an 876 this season. He's 11-13-4. So yeah, he's been struggling. Like I said, the King goalies in general have been struggling, but I don't know. I keep looking back. I like this trade. I think this trade probably was the best return that they would have gotten for these two players. Could they maybe have leveraged it into, I don't know, a first and a second from other teams? Maybe. But I think getting Quick back was probably a pretty important piece of that trade, because Elvis can't play every single game for the rest of the season. I don't think Jet Greaves is ready to be traumatized by the NHL, especially behind the defense that the Blue Jackets have at the minute. So, hey, they've got a veteran goalie who can play, 8 of the last 25 games or however many there is, and give Elvis a break, stop Elvis from getting injured. Also, if Elvis gets injured as well, there goes that, So we will continue this talk about the trade. We'll talk a little bit about Quick as a goalie, what he brings to the team a little bit more in just a minute. But first, I've got to tell you all about FanDuel, because it is America's #1 sports book. And like I said at the beginning, if you would put some money on the trade breaking last night, probably you would have made a fair amount. And with FanDuel, new customers get a no sweat first bet up to $1,000. That means that if your first bet doesn't win, you get bonus bets back up to that amount. So if you bet $1,000 in your opening bet and it doesn't win, you get that money back in bonus bets, which is a super cool thing for FanDuel to do. All you have to do is go to FanDuel.com/locked-on to learn more. Just download the FanDuel Sportsbook app. It's safe, secure, super easy to use. You can bet on everything from money line, point scorers, threes drained, who's going to win the cup this season. Once again, go to FanDuel.com/locked-on to learn more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. So I was going to talk about, everything that happened last night in this show, but I think we might have to split it because we're already 9 minutes in and I am not done talking about Quick, Korpisalo, and Gavrikov, as well as those picks. So Jonathan Quick is, like I said, he is a goalie at the end of his career. He is essentially a warm body to put on the ice so they don't have to make Elvis play basically every game. Because I don't know if you remember last season, Korpisalo got shut down around about this time, actually, with that hip injury. And then they basically just made Elvis play every game between now and the end of the season. In fact, I can probably pull up how many games he played after. He played like 23 of 24 games at the end of last season. Like it was not super great for anything. But let's just pull that up real quick. He played 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. He played 13 games in April alone, and then it looks like he played basically every game in March as well. So yeah, not the best kind of like asset management, I don't think. He went like 500 in these games, which is great. But I think the important thing right now is, especially it looks like Elvis is kind of starting to become Elvis again. If you bring in Quick, and he can play, literally a third of the games that they have remaining. We don't even need a 50-50 split. But if he could be the guy that plays, on back-to-backs, or if they have, 3 games in 5 nights or something, then they could give Elvis a break. Because you can't keep running your goalies into the ground. And I feel like the Blue Jackets have been guilty of this for a long time, is they go with the hot hand and then they play him until he can't play anymore, or they play whichever goalie isn't injured, because they've had a lot of goalie injuries in the past couple of seasons. And again, I wonder how much of that is due to overwork, things like that. So at the very worst case scenario, Jonathan Quick is a guy that can come in and exist on the ice so Elvis doesn't have to. Will he win? Will he be good for the Blue Jackets? Unlikely. Like I said, he's at the end of his career. He's not having a great season. Who's playing behind arguably a much better, not even arguably, objectively a much better defense in the LA Kings. So I don't know. This might be an experiment that works out, but I don't think it's going to hurt the tank. My only hope is, he's reportedly not super happy about this trade. I don't know whether it's specifically a trade to Columbus, or if it's a trade to a non-playoff team, or if it's a trade at all. But I do worry that he's going to be a child about it. Jonathan Quick is not the most super mature player on the ice. As long as he doesn't come in and like screw up the vibes in the room, then that feels like a win. I wasn't worried about that until I was in one of my group chats. We were discussing kind of the legacy of Jonathan Quick, and someone was like, well, there's a 50-50 chance that he just doesn't report to Columbus and throws a massive tantrum. And I was like, man, you know what? You're right. This happened before with players that are LA Kings affiliated. Obviously, the big Jeff Carter thing. Obviously, Jeff Carter was, like 22 when that happened, so still basically a child. Jonathan Quick is 37 and arguably an adult now, so I don't know that he will go quite to that length, but I could see him not being the most welcoming guy in the room, or not welcoming because obviously he's the new guy, but I could see him not being the friendliest. Which they're all adults, they should be able to get on with that, but we'll see how it goes. I don't know that Jonathan Quick is going to be a Blue Jacket longer than the 25 or whatever games they have remaining. Like I said, he's at the end of his contract. He's 37. This might be him just being like, well, I am going to call it a day. Sucks that he doesn't get to finish out his career in LA, where he played every game. He's been a King his entire career. He's like the second winningest American-born goalie of all time. He leads the Kings in wins, I'm pretty sure. Like, it sucks that he didn't get to finish out his career there. But this could be an interesting move for the Blue Jackets. Obviously, that first round pick and that third round pick are really nice, especially that first round pick. Kings lost in the first round last year. They ended up trading their first round pick away for Kevin Fiala. But if they lose in the first round, then that is a pick in the kind of 16 to 24 range, depending on where the Kings finish in the standings. I'm just going to look at where the pick was last year so we kind of have an idea. But again, in a draft as deep as this, the pick ended up being 19th. So that's in a draft as deep as this, like that's a pretty solid pick. And honestly, I was kind of expecting a 28 to 32 range or 29 to 32 range when that pick was when it was Boston's. You know, the assumption was, okay, it's Boston's pick. It's probably going to be up there in terms of a late first rounder, basically a second rounder. Yeah, I was just making sure that the Kings only have their own first round pick. So it's not going to be like randomly Tampa Bay's first round pick or whatever. They do have Pittsburgh's third round pick. So I wonder if it's going to be their first round pick and then Pittsburgh's third. So that likely will be a little bit lower down because Pittsburgh might not make the playoffs this year. So we'll see how that goes. But this first round pick likely going to be, I would hazard a guess, it's going to be around about the 20th overall mark, which I'm not mad about. I think in a draft as deep as this, that's a really good position. And in fact, we have some draft coverage coming later this week about a couple of players that maybe could be available in that 15 to 25 range. So, hey, maybe that's the ideal. Honestly, I think the thing I'm most excited about is that first round pick. I really wanted to get an extra first round pick in this draft, especially with this draft being as deep as it was. I think had Gus Nyquist been healthy and had a better season, probably we could have leveraged that into 2 first round picks. But again, I'm not mad about the return. I think getting that first and the third is the good things. Quick is the extra thrown in because a first and a third is not enough for arguably their new starting goaltender and probably a bottom 4 defenseman who plays a style of playoff hockey that the Kings probably will love and like teams love. GMs love the kind of the style that Gavrikov plays, which is what we're going to talk about in a minute. We're going to talk about Gavrikov. We're going to talk about Korpisalo and their legacies with the Blue Jackets, because it's a weird kind of almost end of an era type feeling right now. So we're going to talk about that in just a minute. But first, I've got to tell you about Indeed. No matter how the last game went, anytime you take the field, you have got a shot at greatness. You've got to give your team the best shot at winning by recruiting more MVPs, and you can do that with Indeed. If you're hiring, you need Indeed. They are the hiring partner where you can attract, interview, and hire all in one place. It's the only job site where you're guaranteed to find quality applications that meet your must-have requirements, or you don't pay. So instead of spending hours on multiple job sites hoping to find candidates with the right skills, just use one powerful hiring partner that can help you do it all. Indeed partners with you on every step of the hiring process. Find great talent through time-saving tools like Indeed Instant Match, assessments, virtual interviews. With Instant Match, as soon as you sponsor a post, you get a short list of quality candidates with resumes on Indeed that match your job description, and you can invite them to apply right away. Plus, you only pay for quality applications that meet your must-have requirements. Indeed, when I am looking for a job, I have been unlucky enough to have to job hunt for several times over the past couple of years. Indeed is always the place I go to, and I think it's the place that a lot of people go to. So if you're hiring, you can go to Indeed. You can start hiring right now with a $75 sponsored job credit to upgrade your job post at Indeed.com/locked-on. The offer is valid through March 31st. Once again, that is Indeed.com/locked-on to claim your $75 credit before March 31st. Indeed.com/locked-on. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed. So I said at the end of the last segment that it's kind of an end of an era with Korpisalo and Gavrikov, and I don't necessarily think it's the full end of an era. It's the turnover for this team has just been massive. I was looking last night, just out of interest, the 2019 playoff run, the playoff series win over Tampa Bay. There are now only 4 players on the roster right now that were on the team that season. And two of those players were not full-time NHLers yet. So the player, Boone Jenner, he's the longest tenured Blue Jacket at the minute. Then they have Zach Werenski out with an injury at the minute, obviously. Eric Robinson, who apparently is in his 6th NHL season, which makes me feel ancient. Shout out to his hat trick last night. We're not going to have time to get into that game, but we will talk about it tomorrow, I promise, because I want to give Eric Robinson his dues. And the last player is Alexander Texier, who is not playing this for the Blue Jackets this season. He's back in Europe, playing in Zurich, I believe. But of the players that were responsible or contributed towards that playoff win, it's basically just Boone Jenner and Zach Werenski. And Zach Werenski is not even playing at the minute. So the only player actively on the ice right now who was a part of that playoff win is Boone Jenner. Similarly, that Calder Cup win in 2016, the magical, ridiculous run, Joonas Korpisalo was a huge part of that. He was one of the 2 goalies. He was phenomenal with this trade. Zach Werenski is, I believe, the only Blue Jacket that was a part of that Calder Cup win. So people talk about team turnover a lot. I didn't realize how big the turnover had been until I was kind of looking last night. I knew that there'd been a massive turnover in the past kind of couple of seasons. I didn't think there is literally 4 players left from a 2019 playoff run. There's a handful more from 2020. I don't have the numbers with me right now, but it's out there. The time continues to go. Boone Jenner. So I started following this team in 2014. Boone Jenner is the only player left on the team. I believe the only player left in the organization that was on the team then. I believe Korpisalo was a 2013 draft pick, so he was in the organization but not on the team because he was 19 and still in Finland. But losing 2 players like this, and especially Gavrikov, who has been such a stalwart for this team over the past kind of couple of seasons, he was, for long periods of time, he was that shutdown defenseman that this team needed. He's going to probably play more sheltered minutes, which is good for him. I think LA is deep enough defensively that he is going to be a depth guy. He doesn't need to be a number 1 guy. That's I think what he needs. He is going to finish his Blue Jackets career with 256 games played, 73 points. He is a defensive defenseman. He has 5 NHL seasons. He was a guy that kind of came into Columbus, played in a training camp, and then he had 1 season where he went back to the KHL, and then in 1920, that was his rookie season. He played 69 games, had 18 points, really good rookie season, and from then he's been one of the only Blue Jackets to play in the majority of the games. He played 55 in that COVID-shortened season. He played 80 last year. I believe he missed a couple of games this year due to injury before being scratched for trade-related reasons, which is why he's missed the last couple of games. But he was a really good Blue Jacket, and I think I was down on him this season. I think he's not had a very good season this season because he was playing above his level. I think they're going to really see a huge improvement from Gavrikov, playing in a better system, playing more sheltered minutes. He doesn't have to be the guy. Obviously, when Werenski went down, the guy was either going to be him or Gabranson, and now that he's gone, the guy is probably going to be Gabranson for the end of the season, which is a whole other thing that we'll get into later on. But he's a guy that is probably going to, in the same way that Savard thrived in Tampa Bay. He doesn't have to be a top 4 guy. He can be a bottom pairing. He can be a very good bottom pairing guy. He can be a good second pairing guy. He doesn't have to be a top pairing guy for LA. And so I think we're going to see a massive jump in his underlying stats basically as soon as he gets to LA, which is great. I love that for him. And I love that for LA. I think this is a really smart pickup for them. A guy that's been underperforming this season will almost certainly do better next season, or not next season, but for the remainder of this season. And I think Joonas Korpisalo is a phenomenal pickup for them. The Kings, like I said, struggling with goaltending this season. Joonas Korpisalo has, since coming back from injury, he had that hip injury for most of last season. I think that was really impacting him more than anyone kind of really realized. He's been great this season. He's going to finish this season as a Blue Jacket with a .913 save percentage and an 11-11-3 record, 317 goals against. His NHL career so far, a .903 save percentage. He is 87, 78, 24. The Kings, I think, are going to enjoy having Joonas Korpisalo around. Like I said, he's having his best season this might be his best season ever. Honestly, he has never in his rookie season, he finished with a .920 save percentage. .913 is the second highest of his career so far. He finished 1920 with a .911. But again, I feel like that was a season where he again was super injured. So it's been rough going for Korpisalo, up and down, but this season he's really kind of having personal success, if not team success. Stats for the LA Kings goaltending, like I said, Quick was on like an 878 or something. They sent Cal Peterson down to the minors because he was having such a bad time this season. They've been playing Phoenix Copley a lot, who, in fairness, I think has been playing pretty well for them. I mean, he's still only got an 899, but he is 18-4-2 in 26 starts this season. So immediately, Korpisalo is the starting guy for them. I think this is a really smart pickup for the Kings, and I love this for Korpisalo. I think he deserves to go somewhere and find success. Maybe this turns into a long-term thing for Korpisalo. I wouldn't be mad about that. I like LA. It's not Toronto. It's not Edmonton, which were the other two places I kind of suspected he might go. So yeah, I want success for Korpisalo. We'll miss him. He will leave the Blue Jackets still holding the record for, I believe, most saves ever in an NHL game since shots on goal were reported, because he made 85 saves in that like 5 overtime monster from the playoffs. The bubble in 2020, he ended up losing the game, but he made like 85 of 87 or 88 saves. Like, it was just a phenomenal performance from Korpisalo, and that's what I'm going to remember. I think was he the best goalie? No, but seems like a great guy. He's been a Blue Jacket for a long time. He was part of that magical Calder Cup run. He holds an NHL record. Like, I'm going to miss Korpi. I liked Korpi a lot. I know I've been really critical of him on the podcast basically since I started, but I'm happy for him. I hope he goes and finds success in LA. I will be rooting for him, and by extension, rooting for LA. And that's really all I've got time for you today. Tomorrow, like I said, unless anything groundbreaking happens between now and then, we will talk about what I didn't have time to talk about today. We will check in on the Gus Nyquist trade really quickly. We will talk about the game and what a good sign it is to see Elvis playing so well. Lots of goaltender talk this week, which is great for me. You know, I love to talk about goaltending. I've been Jay Foster. You can find me on Twitter at _Jacob Foster, JAKOBFORSTER. You can find the podcast at LO_Blue Jacket. If you have comments, questions, criticisms, you can email me at lockedonbluejackets@gmail.com. Thank you for listening. Thank you for making this your first listen of the day every day. Locked on Blue Jackets is free and available on all podcast platforms. We are over on YouTube. If you haven't hit subscribe over there, please feel free to do so. And if you have already subscribed, thank you. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. I appreciate all of you. And until tomorrow, make sure you stay locked on.